Now that I spent what felt like a million years fixing my script because for some reason when I saved and reopened it, everything was scrambled, I fixed it now, and I'm going to be talking about The Last of Us 2, and we're gonna see why I only do DVD commentary and I don't commentate on story or narrative games, even though The Last of Us definitely is probably my favorite narrative game, and besides multiplayer games that are solely based off the experience like COD, CSGO, Dead by Daylight, The Last of Us is one of my favorite games I've ever played, if not the best game. I can't say it's the best, but it is my favorite game I have ever played. And if you're wondering why I don't have any of the footage from the second game or the first game, I don't have my capture card. Comes in today, and I'm too lazy to wait because I wrote up the script, got 2 hours of sleep, was late to work because I was making the script. So anyway, I digress. Let's get into the story of, let's not necessarily get into the story, but let's just get into my thoughts on the game in general. So I think The Last of Us 2 was a very complex game that was just done poorly. I've written up an entire script here, which I'll probably leave in the description. It's not even a script, it's more of an outline of just what I want to talk about. So to just ground everything, we're going to start with the first game. If you don't know the plot of the first game, basically, it opens up, you play as Joel's daughter, Sarah, and very early into the game, Joel loses his daughter. And we flash forward 20 years, he's doing missions with Tess, and he's starting to run for the Fireflies. He essentially is not necessarily a mercenary. I guess you could say he is, but he just does really, dirty jobs to get by in the apocalypse now after the virus has struck. He gets a mission, he gets a job to deliver Ellie to the Fireflies at the request of Marlene. So he does that. And over that journey, the two are able to connect with each other. Joel is able to reconnect with Ellie, like the daughter he lost, and Ellie's able to connect with Joel like the father she never had. And you just watch these characters grow a lot throughout the journey of the first game. Just through, there's nothing specific, which is why my notes for the first game are actually very short when compared to the second game, because the first game is pretty basic, if I'm being honest, but it was executed amazing, which is why it's so good, even though the story is so simple. Really, it's just the interaction of the two on their missions, and as you play as either side, and your interactions with them that makes you fall in love with the characters. But eventually, you see that Ellie starts to warm up to Joel, and Joel starts to warm up to Ellie. I think the best example of this is when Joel is actually mortally wounded, when he falls on the rebar and Ellie has to take care of him. The roles are reversed. She says, Joel, what do I do? Etc. It's, it shows the chemistry between the two dynamics of the characters. And we make it to the end of the game, which again, this is a very quick summary. And when I go through the second game, it's going to be a little bit longer, but very quick summary. You get to the end of the game where Joel and Ellie finally make it to the Fireflies, though not necessarily in the best way. Joel's knocked out, or Ellie's knocked out. They have to resuscitate her, bring her back. And this is when Joel learns that to create a cure, the whole mission, and the whole reason why Ellie was taken to the Fireflies is to be made as a cure. But the virus grew around her brain, so therefore they would have to kill her. And this is where I want to say, if you watch the behind the scenes, Troy Baker reads about the character Joel. He has few moral lines left to cross, and this is where they really show that, because I've seen reviews of the second game saying, it's not bad, you guys are just upset, etc., 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 which I have it linked in the description and in my review. I watched it, and I watched it with an open mind, and I'm not gonna hate on it or anything, but he said the plot of the first game, but from Abby's perspective of the second game, and he's like, Joel's no hero, no good guy, and yes, that is true. We don't, I don't know why people claim him as the hero either. It's more the relationship we connect with and not the character itself. We actually connect more with Ellie than we do with Joel. Anyway, I digress. But this really shows that he has few moral lines left to cross. He takes Ellie, murders the doctor and Marlene, and leaves with her. And then on the way back, Ellie asks Joel about what really happened there, and she's very distant, and Joel's scared to tell the truth, obviously, so he lies to her. And then we close the first game, and that concludes it. And I thought the game was really good. I think it was executed well. And, replaying it the last week, it's been a little bit annoying, I will say, mainly because I suck with controller aim. And even though I have the controller sensitivity maxed, I just feel I can never aim fast enough. Anyway, closing thoughts on the story. I think it's pretty basic. If you think about it, it's just two strangers, a father figure, daughter figure, who go close to each other. This has been a lot in cinema and other games and books. It's not a new thing to be done. It's not anything, and insanely creative. And the fact that it's a zombie story where they have a miracle cure, you know, it's again like one of the tropes that's already been done before, but it was executed very, very well, which is why I think it works, even though it's very basic of a plot and game. And it's really just the relationship between Joel and Ellie that sets this game at the bar it was set at, you know, why it's so good and why everyone enjoys it so much. And all in all, I really enjoyed the game. This brings us to the second game, where we're gonna take that and completely fucking destroy it. Okay. But to sum up the basic plot, I wrote a lot here and I don't want to really go into it, so spoiler warning for the second game if you haven't seen it. This entire video is going to be about the story, so if you haven't seen the game, you shouldn't watch this video. I'm assuming you've seen the game, so I'm just going to go very briefly over it. So it follows the events of the first game very, very closely. They return to Jackson. Joel spills the beans to Tommy. And then it jumps forward 4 years, and you get woken up by Jesse as Ellie. You're about to go on one of your like routes or whatever, or I can't remember what they call them in the game. It's something regarding like routes. I don't know. I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe I'll add it in post if I'm not too lazy. But anyway, you're gonna go on one of those because Joel and Tommy have been out forever, and you gotta relieve them. So you start heading out with Dina, and you're gonna go to this like little safe house in like the town, but a blizzard hits, and you seek shelter in one of Eugene's old bases or some shit. He has weed down there. They smoke, get high, talk about what happened the night before, and have sex. And then it cuts to black. You start playing as Abby a little bit earlier in the day. Like you essentially replay the day, but as Abby she's caught in a pickle essentially. And she bumps into these two strangers who saved her life. She brings them back to her mansion where they're revealed to be Joel and Tommy. At which point, Joel is shotgunned in the knee, Tommy is knocked out, and Abby enacts her revenge. We don't know why yet, but she enacts her revenge. And then you jump back to Ellie's POV, and Jesse finds you guys, is like, what the heck are you doing? What the frick, dude? Not cool. Nonetheless, you start searching for Joel and Tommy. This is when, as Ellie, you end up making it to the mansion they're at. You peer and you see, and then you go to stop it. You go to intervene, but you're quickly stopped. I think you take out like 2 guys and you're stopped. You watch the brutal murder of Joel in front of you. And it's just really heartbreaking because as Ellie, you're sitting there watching just Joel in his final moments. And, she pleads for him to stop and for Joel to get up, but Joel doesn't get up. And it's really hard because, you're watching all these father figures just be murdered in front of her. It's absolutely terrible. And it broke I cried. Abby lets Tommy and Ellie live. Dina, Jesse find them, bring them home, and Ellie is completely just fucking out of it. It's taken a huge toll on her, and she's just so enraged. And she's thirsty for vengeance. It ends up leading to Tommy going out on his own, Jesse following after, and then Ellie and Dina consulting with Maria, and then going to get both of them. Well, they didn't know Jesse went yet, I don't think. But anyway, or I can't remember if Jesse went after them and then he followed them. I can't remember. Yeah, essentially from that point on, you're just murdering people through Washington. You play it solo, and I added this because I almost forgot. It literally says in brackets or in parentheses. Almost forgot to add this because it really didn't matter. Lamau, because the story. Because at that point, like a lot of people were just bummed with the story. But Dina is pregnant, which is why you're playing it solo. She's sick, can't do anything. And you just go around murdering cult members, and then you eventually meet up with Jesse. Yeah, you eventually meet up with Jesse, and then with Jesse, you eventually meet up with Tommy, and then it almost seems like everything's coming together. You're devising a plan, but then you get jumped by Abby. Abby takes out Jesse, just shoots him right in the fucking face. And then she holds Ellie at gunpoint, whereas you switch perspective and you play the last 3 days through Abby's perspective. You see her murdering her old tribe members, her meeting Lev through flashbacks, and Ellie's POV has flashbacks as well. But, which in my opinion, they're one of the better parts of the game. But, I didn't really touch on them too much because, to be honest, amongst the sprawling gameplay that is just everything that happens in Washington. I almost like I said, I almost forgot to happen. So there you go. But yeah, you play through that, and then you eventually catch up to where you left off, you catch up to present time where you start playing as Abby. You shoot Tom in the back of the head, and you're essentially in like a little boss fight, I guess, where you have to try and kill Ellie. You eventually get the better of Ellie, and you knock out Dina, and you're about to kill Dina in front of Ellie's face when Lev comes in and pleads that this is what you should be doing, and you let Ellie and Dina go. Fades to black, and then you continue. You're a little bit farther in the future. Doesn't say exactly how long, judging by the age of the baby. I want to say maybe 6 months or so, 6 to 9 months later. Well, actually, no, it has to be more than 9 months because Dina wasn't pregnant. So actually, it could be over a year later. But child is born. Dina and Ellie are living happily together on their like little farmhouse. Tommy comes by. Essentially, child is born. Dina and Ellie are living happily in their farmhouse, and you get to see the real toll that Joel's death has left on her. Even though one of the flashbacks shows that they weren't on good terms when everything left off.
Maria. Yeah, go ahead. We're in the control room.
But
It's about to start it back up. You want to come check it out?
you get to see that how impactful it really was, and you'll learn why at the very end of the game. But you'll see why it's impactful because even through everyday tasks, she has PTSD of it. She just can't forget it. She sees his screams, his face. She just can't get over it. Sees his screams, hears his screams, sees his face, and eventually Tommy comes by and essentially guilt trips her into taking action again. He says he knows someone who, or he met up with someone who knows of a duo that matches Abby and Lev's description. And as much as Dina doesn't want her to do it, Ellie reluctantly goes ahead with it against Dina's will. Dina's sad, and Ellie's kind of cold here, but I understand. She tells her she loves her, but she has to do it. And she departs and leaves for California. You switch back to Abby's perspective, or you play a little bit as Lev, in California, you go back in time a little bit so you can kind of understand like what's going on there, what's happening. And then they eventually get caught by this group of people who capture and imprison people. And then you switch back to Ellie. And then with Ellie, you start fighting the group. You get caught in one of their traps, injured, and then you take out their little group there, find out where they're staying, and then you go and infiltrate their camp, free their prisoners, and then you find Abby. You follow Abby all the way down to the boat. She's carrying Lev, but this is where the final fight starts, and because Abby loads Lev into the boat, but Ellie won't let them just go like that. She wants to fight. Ellie fights Abby. They trade blows. Abby ends up biting off Ellie's fingers, but Ellie eventually gets the better of her and is drowning her. The audio starts ringing and is fading out when you see a flashback of Joel sitting on the porch with his guitar. I think you stop.
What do you do for protection?
You let Abby go. Her and Lev leave, and you go back home. You find your farmhouse abandoned, and everyone's gone because Dina said she wasn't going to do this anymore. And well, now Ellie's really living with those consequences. She ends up going upstairs and finding her guitar, Joel's guitar, rather, and she tries to play the Pearl Jam song that Joel played for her in the opening of the game, but she can't. And then it goes to a cutscene, which is the flashback you saw when you spared Abby's life. And it was, and to summarize that cutscene, it's really good, very emotional. I cried watching it because I'm a baby. But Ellie is ready to try and forgive Joel, and I feel this is why it gives her vengeance so much extra weight to it, is because this happened the day before Joel died. Because it was the night of the dance, which led to the morning of the day Joel died. And man, it was just tough to watch that, and it was very emotional. I think Ellie's like on the verge of tears, and so is Joel. Ellie wants to try and forgive Joel, but is ultimately never given a chance to. The game cuts back to Ellie sitting upstairs after thinking of that flashback, and She sets down the guitar, and then you see her walking off into the distance, and then it rolls credits. That's the entire second game, basically. Summed up as fast as I could. Sorry that wasn't too fast, but
Pretty impressive.
my final thoughts on like just the second game is, you know, by how much I had to, like, how much more I had to talk about it compared to the first game. You can tell that it had, like, it was, Jesus Christ, like the plot is more complex and detailed than the first game by, you know, a lot. There's a lot going on. And they really went for something, like Naughty Dog, like truly went for something intriguing, and they wanted a deeper story than was in the first game. And they delivered on some aspects, but just not all. They completely dropped the ball on a few, which I'll go into. The gameplay is kind of repetitive and a lot like the first game, just running around looting for a lot of the Washington parts. But I mean, you can't complain. The first game did it. But the thing was, is you had the character interactions between Joel and Ellie, them cracking jokes and just talking to each other. You were able to, you know, do that. I don't know if my thing is still recording. I'm scared. Update, it was recording. We're all good. But yeah, you got to have the characters interact with each other. They would talk and they would make jokes, and then they would talk about life experiences. But you didn't have that in the second game, which is why I feel it's a little bit more boring. Because it repeats the same gameplay of the first game. I just think if they would have trimmed that down, it would be a lot more fun to play. Make it maybe a 15-hour game would be nice. But we're gonna continue on. The combat is very fun, and stealth is very well done in this game. Stealth is something they've been working on since like Uncharted 4. They've been trying to get that right. They want heavy emphasis on doing things stealthy, and I think they did stealth better in the second game than they did the first one. You know, I mean, obviously the only way to go is up. You can always improve something, but you can always make something worse. Which I'll go into with how they did that in this game. From a technological standpoint, the game is gorgeous. With the technology they're working with on the PS4, it looks great. The animations are amazing. I mean, it's a Naughty Dog game. You know, Naughty Dog games always look good, always have beautiful lighting and everything. So there's, you know, nothing less. But they've definitely raised the bar for other narrative stories. But on the topic of narrative, that's where this game falls apart. The story is complex and detailed, yeah, but it's delivered so poorly. Just playing out the story just isn't satisfying. I understand not every story ending should be satisfying, but it just almost feels insulting in a way of how unsatisfying it is, like it was done intentionally. And I feel like they could have just reordered the events of this game, and it would have been an outstanding game. It's just, I don't know. A lot of the characters were just nobodies. They weren't developed fully. I mean, they were acted very well, but like you weren't really invested in them, mainly because the main reason why people want a second game is they wanted more of Joel and Ellie, but they didn't give us any of that. Which is why I feel they could have, like I said, they could have reorganized the game so you can kind of get your fill of Joel and Ellie, and then they can break that apart and then can move on with the plot that they wanted to tell us. And there's just kind of a lot of holes in the plot, like why Abby let Ellie and Tommy live, and why she did it again, you know, in Washington.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Like, I don't know why she would just, God, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense with her character. And just how they kind of wrote her is very weird. Which I'll go into after I'm done with like everything I have to talk about here. And
Absolutely not. You tell him to go find somebody else.
I don't know. But again, I understand, like I talk about how the game was given to us, you know, the presentation of it and the direction it took. But I mean, I still want to finish the game, which is why I think that Neil Druckmann is still a really good writer, because even though I was upset with the story, I didn't like how it was presented, I didn't like what happened, I still wanted to finish the game. I still wanted to end it. I would still feel empty and incomplete if I did not finish the game. Well, I would feel emptier than I do now. So, I mean, props to him for, even though it was a tougher story and it didn't come out as right, you know, he still was able to make you want to finish the game. Um,
Fine.
and the game has a really dark ending. You know, Ellie loses everything, and I'll go into more on that, which is I'll go into more on that in a second. But you know, she loses everything, and it just ends. She's all alone, and it just doesn't feel like an earned dark. Like the ending's really dark, but it doesn't feel earned. Kind of like in Uncharted 4, where it has a happy ending and it doesn't feel earned. If you watch Donkey's Uncharted 4 review, you know what I'm talking about. I don't know, it just doesn't feel earned, and you know, the game has received a lot of harsh criticism and a lot of just tough shit. Mainly just because they killed Joel, and I think that, yeah, I didn't like that either. I do think that people need to actually take a step back, like I did, and then just reinvest themselves in the game, and then try and see what they like about it. Because I honestly just didn't care. I would just skip through. Like, I was just mindlessly going through the game until I got to a cutscene. I just wanted to see more, and really, I just wanted to see Abby get fucking brutalized. But never happened, and I was very upset. But then I took a step back. You know, I watched other people's perspective, and I tried to understand the narrative from a new point of view. And it didn't make me like the game, but it made me not hate it as much. I think the game is okay at best. And I respect the attempt at what they did. You know, they went to do something that was very, very different, very creative, but the risk that they took would have paid off more if they would have just taken more time to play test it or run the story by some, you know, outside people. I mean, the game isn't dog shit, but it's not great. It's not the sequel we wanted, but it's the sequel we got. And that essentially ends my entire like overview of that. And I'm just gonna add a few more points on the end here. One thing I can say, or some critiques I have regarding it, is the hypocrisy. I think with the first thing, well, I'll name off. One, the hypocrisy between Abby and Ellie's characters. I don't understand how Abby is going to go out and get vengeance for her father and kill Joel, and then we have Ellie do the same thing. But then Ellie isn't allowed to get vengeance for Joel, and it ends up forgiving Abby in the end, is what I've heard the ending is supposed to be. She's supposed to forgive her. You know, she's going to think of Joel and just realize, why not? But at that point, like I saw, I'll list the reviews in the description. You'll see where I'm basing a lot of my views off of. Like, what's the point of that at that point? Like, she's went through all this effort. You might as well just do it, you know? And then why couldn't Abby just forgive Joel, you know? It's very hypocritical, and I don't know if it was in one of the reviews I already have linked, but I remember someone just describing Abby's character, that she was just written, like, the way she is given to us, she's evil, which is point number 2. It's just that Abby is irredeemable based off how the story plays out, in the order it's played out in. She's irredeemable, and there's no way you can humanize her to most of the fan base that love Joel. You just can't do it. Which is where I think, you know, just simply reorganizing something would help the game dramatically. 3, the ending. I will say I actually kind of like what they did with the ending, because if you remember in the first game, Ellie's biggest fear was how everyone's left her and she's all alone. And at the ending, you know, they make it kind of like how Nathan Drake would have been in Uncharted 4 if they didn't magically just give it a happy ending and just resolve everything. You know, she, just like Nathan Drake, she was suicidal and going after vengeance, just how Nathan was losing his friends and family by going after treasure, and, you know, getting himself caught up in all this and all these messes he was getting himself into. So I was like, and that's the parallel between the two. But I mean, I kind of like, I will say I like the ending a little bit, because, you know, Ellie's alone and it's under her own fruition, or it's due to her own actions, shall I say. And I think that's, you know, some consistency between the first game and the second game, but, you know, carried on. It's just now that she has to live with her biggest fear, you know, all because whatever, of what happened in the game, not just whatever. And I do kind of like that. I like that consistency. guess my 4 is like I'm sad that they killed Joel. I wish they didn't do it, but it's not, you know, I think they could have still killed him and delivered a better story, maybe through a rewrite of it or through something else. And I guess these are in order of importance, rather. Like the first one's like, I don't like the hypocrisy of this, I don't like this. And then, you know, 3 is like, here's what I kind of like, but it's not that important. And 4 is like, yeah, I wish they didn't kill Joel. And then 5 is like, yeah, I think they could have just rewrote the story and just given us like, oh, let's do the journey of them back to Jackson or something. Like, just, hey, they could have done a whole different plot and then just had like Joel and Ellie play it just like the first game, but with better graphics. Woohoo! Which would have been the safest option, but probably the least creative. When it comes to the game, though, I think if they would have just reorganized what happened instead of having those flashbacks, actually continuing, you know, to their building up to the very last scene where Joel tries to forgive, or where Ellie tries to forgive Joel, you know, just play all those cutscenes like that. You know, everything, all the flashbacks into, you know, the falling out, into the night prior. You know, I think if they would have done stuff like that,
And if I say no.
and then once that's all been settled, you have that final cutscene where Joel and Ellie want to forgive each other. You can cut back to Abby's flashbacks and start playing Abby's side of the story.
Well, I guess we're both.
And then you can build up Abby's perspective, and then you can continue the game from how it starts in the beginning, where Ellie wakes up the next day, and then it plays out the exact same.
Tommy knows this area.
And I think that would have given us a better experience, at least with this story. I think that would have been the better direction to lead it in, because we would have, you know, we would get the Joel and Ellie interactions we want. We'd be satisfied. We'd have an Abby that isn't just immediately given to us as this brutal Joel killer. We would get an actual, you know, way to humanize and sympathize with her, especially when it is revealed that Joel did kill her father. You'd be torn in a way, especially if you're able to develop a better character interaction between her and her father, and get really attached to their relationship. Then it would have been definitely a way better game, in my opinion. It would have been, I wouldn't have been upset with Joel dying. I wouldn't be happy, but I would be able to justify, and we would understand why Ellie is so distraught and upset and sad and stuff. And all in all, then you could probably go with the ending they gave it for sure. You could be satisfied with that ending, even though Joel's gone. Again, I think the game would have played out just better if they would have just kept the same story, kept everything the same, just reorganized it. I mean, you'd have to add some filler stuff for the beginning if you did continue from where the first game ended. I think you could do that, but I don't know. I think it would have been a more pleasant experience. People wouldn't have been as upset with it, and I mean, I think it really would have been enjoyable. I'm assuming we're gonna get a third one. I don't know if I'll be that invested in it at all. I don't know, man. I'm just kind of sad and pretty upset with the story. I still feel empty regarding how the story ended. But I mean, that's my overall thoughts on it. I'm very neutral, I guess. Like I said, I think it's an okay game. And I'll still love the first one so much. I am very attached to the second game due to the fact that you actually get to see Joel really caring as Ellie like a daughter. And that's what the first game gave you at the end. That's why it teased you. That's why people wanted the second game, is they wanted more, but with them actually like really happy, which is why the flashbacks are so good and why they work so well with the character dynamic. The fact that they break up the main game is kind of, but this is going on for over 30 minutes and I'll have to cut this shit up and edit it, which is going to give me fucking stage 4 AIDS or some shit. I don't know. But that's just everything I had to say about the game. I wanted to get it out there, and I'm glad I wrote a script for it, so I at least have more organized thoughts, even though I'm going to have to cut out some stuff just because I ended up saying it differently than how I wrote it. But yeah, I'll leave this in the description so you can see where all my thoughts are. If you wanted just a version you could skim over instead of listening to my annoying voice for over 30 minutes. But I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you guys so much. I hope you maybe share some of the same opinions on me, on this stuff as I do.
Get off your horse.
I don't know. I just love this game series, and I really love Joel's character and Ellie's character and the dynamic between them. And it's sad the sequel we got. So
Your wife kinda
I don't know.
scares me.
like I said, thank you guys for watching.
I don't
Appreciate
want
it so much. And I'll see you guys in probably another DVD video at some point. This video is so long, so I might end up actually recording some PS3 footage because I'm gonna be way too fucking lazy to edit it. So enjoy the fucking Last of Us footage. Let's go. All right, bye bye.